Hello everyone and welcome to a really impressive game that was played 2 days ago in the Aeroflot Open tournament in round 5. It's Indian Grandmaster Abhimanyu Puranik versus Russian Grandmaster Sanan Sjugirov. We already checked out a few games by Sjugirov on this channel, his most notable one being his win against Magnus Carlsen. To this day considered maybe Carlsen's worst defeat ever from the 2010 Chess Olympiad. If you haven't seen that game, I will put a link to it in the description below. It will be the first thing you see, so yeah, if you want to check that game out as well. But yeah, really impressive stuff, and I saw 2 days ago and even yesterday that a lot of people were sharing the positions from this game on Twitter, and I thought, okay, those are very nice positions, but then I actually saw the game and the game was even better. So without further ado, let's check it out. Puranik opens with knight to f3, and Sjugirov replies with the d5. It's my favorite reply to the Reti. We have g3 and g6. Both players are ready to fianchetto their bishops. Bishop g2, bishop g7. We have castles, and now here by some principles, you want to play d4 here. You kind of don't want to allow black this e5 move, but here white does it. But these are modern times, and modern approach to chess is seen every day. So abandoning the center, we have castles, and then now e5, and with this two central pawns, black has incredible central control. We have d3 by white now, ready to challenge the center with e4. We have knight d7 preparing to castle, and e4 now. We have castles, captures on d5, knight captures on d5, and now rook to e1, adding another attacker to the pawn, developing the rook, knight c6, defending, and now knight to c3. And here, declining the trade, going back, knight to de7, preparing to remaneuver this knight to f5. We have rook to b1, still considered standard theory when black defends the way black does, getting the rook away from this diagonal, also now supporting the b pawn. b4 is ready to be played, so a5. Sjugirov prevents this, and now b3, preparing to fianchetto the dark square bishop as well. Knight f5, an excellent square for the knight. White will not have an easy task getting rid of it. And now knight to b5. And this position has been reached before. h6 is a known move in this position, but here we have rook to e8 by Sjugirov, and it is as of move 12 that we have a completely new game. So the e5 pawn nicely defended, and white's to play. We have bishop to b2, adding more pressure to the e5 pawn, and now black starts with a4. He wants to bust open the position here, maybe bring the rook over to a2. So here white plays b captures on a4, and it's a bit of a weird move. There was also b4 in the position. b4 is very nice, then you can solidify with a3, and of course if knight captures, you just capture on e5 and you open up an attack to the knight. So b4 was definitely an interesting idea. If you trade captures, then you can capture on b4, and now you can't even go back to g7. You have to keep an eye on the pawn here, and it's very uncomfortable for black. If you go here, then just captures, knight captures here, wins material for white. So instead, after a4, we have b captures on a4, and now rook captures on a4, and a3 now. So not waiting for c4, which would open up a discovery to the rook. We have rook back to a8, and now c4, strengthening the knight here on b5. But it does leave white with a backwards d3 pawn, which might be an issue. But okay, we have knight to d6 now, offering a trade here, trying to get rid of white's active knight on b5, and queen to b3 now. Also with knight to d6, black is preparing e4, which would maybe remove the defender of the c4 pawn. So here, by playing queen to b3, the c4 pawn is also nicely guarded. We have bishop to f5. That's not a bishop. Continuing development, pinning the pawn as the rook is still on b1, and now rook b to d1, defending the pawn. Also, at some point, white might be ready to get rid of his backwards pawn. And queen to d7, developing the queen, connecting rooks, and now a4 by white. And okay, we have rook 8 to d8, and now c5, pushing the knight back. And now, while you could capture, it will only improve white's pawn structure. So here, bishop to e6 first. And this is the start of a most incredible attack, which you'll see. The queen is under attack. We have queen back to a3, and now knight to c4. And we reach the position from the thumbnail where where all hell basically breaks loose. The queen is under attack, also the bishop. The problem is you don't have the luxury of declining this piece offering, because if you move the queen, let's say queen b3, just captures, and d4 just wins the game, as your queen is now under attack and the knight, you're going to lose a piece, and well, you can simply resign. So here you have to capture the knight, which is what Puranik does. D captures on c4, but now comes queen captures on d1. And here, what happens if the queen is captured? If the queen is captured, then rook captures with check, bishop to f1, and now bishop to h3. Just piling up on the bishop here. And it's not game over for white just yet, because knight d2 kind of saves white. You can give up a piece back, and then white can get more defenders to the back rank. However, rook d8 now attacks the knight this way, but still, white has to resort to some trickery, like knight to d6, not allowing rook captures here. And then you would get something like c captures on d6, and now after queen b3 attacking the rook, rook e1. But white is still barely holding on. Bishop to h6 is coming. Once you eliminate the knight, rook captures on f1 is coming. So that's what happens if you capture the queen. So knight captures on c7. And it's really just a crazy position. The queen is still under attack. What do you do here? So here, if you move back the queen, which is possible, let's say queen d7, it really turns into a funny line. Knight captures on e8, rook captures on e8, bishop captures on e5, knight captures on e5, knight captures on e5, knight captures, bishop captures, and now rook captures on e5. And now queen to d1 with check, bishop to f1, and now it's very funny because bishop to h3 is not possible because rook captures with check, and after king g7 you don't have mate because queen to c3 check is enough for white to save the game. However, after bishop to f1, you have this very interesting f6 move, which frees the f7 square for the king. And now after the rook moves, let's say rook e4, now you have bishop captures on c4, and also a lot of crazy stuff can happen. Rook captures on e8, and now you have to go king g7. And now, well, if black gets a move, it's just over. So here, the game would basically end in a repetition. Rook e7, king goes back, check, check, king goes back here, check. Problem is, if king goes to f8, then again, white is completely winning. But even it's a position that never happened. But still, feel free to pause the video and try to find the winning idea here for white, as it's a really funny theme. Well, I give you a couple of seconds. So for those of you who were able to do it, congratulations on spotting this win in this position that never actually happened. And for those of you who just want to enjoy the show, it's actually rook to e2. Yes, you block you block mate, and then well, you have to play something. Bishop captures on e2, and then now comes c6 with check. And now the problem is you don't have a good square for the king. If king here, just queen e7 check picks up the bishop. If you go here, let's say to g8, then queen a2 check picks up the bishop, and you're just you're up a bishop, and you already have two very strong pawns. If you go somewhere like let's say king to e8, then queen to e3 picks up the bishop. So wherever the king goes, you pick up the bishop, you're up material, easily winning game. So really incredible stuff. But yeah, really complicated. But basically, with best play, queen to d7 is not the most ambitious way to go. The most ambitious way to go about it is actually e4, the move that Sjugirov plays. So again, everything is hanging. What does white play here? Capturing with rook captures on d1 still runs into the same defense after knight to d2, the one we already discussed, so you cannot play like this. However, what you can do is knight captures on e8, and this is what white plays. So you just grab the rook. Doesn't matter that black's queen is hanging. E captures on f3. That's the stuff. So again, what do you play here? Again, you could play rook captures on d1. Now it's a bit different because after captures and captures, bishop to f1 blocks and bishop to h3. Now you can defend with queen to a1. You can give up some material. For example, rook captures, you're going to play queen captures, and now, well, bishop captures on f1, bishop captures on g7, and now you're going to move back the bishop, and we go into this endgame with equal material. Really incredible that such an endgame is possible from all of that madness. But yeah, after e captures on f3, we have bishop to c3. Now, white defends the rook and asks, what do you play now? And here, it's possible to play bishop captures on c3. This is what Puranik was going for, because now after captures, the rook is defended, you're threatening to capture the queen, but also you're threatening mate. So it seems like this is completely winning for white. However, queen d4 stops all of this, and black is just better. This is a threat, this is a threat, this is a threat. So black would be winning here. However, Sjugirov finds an even more interesting move, rook to d3. So what's rook to d3, you might ask? Well, he piles up on the bishop here. He still doesn't care about his queen, and he basically forces now rook captures on d1. So this is what Puranik plays. We have rook captures on d1. This is the strongest move. Rook captures on d1 with check, bishop to f1. And now again, bishop to h3 doesn't do anything. Queen to a1 is still a viable defense. So we have bishop captures on c3. And now the problem is you cannot recapture, because if you capture with the queen, then knight d4 just wins. You block mate, so there's that, but also knight to e2 check is coming. You'll have to play king h1, and rook captures on f1 will be mate. So instead of capturing, of course, you cannot just wait around for bishop to h3 to happen. Here, queen to b3 was played, but now, what do you play? Queen b3 attacks the rook. You don't have time for bishop to h3. What do you play here? Feel free to pause the video and try to find it. Yes, it's a mate in 7. So while I have a nice sip of my water. So for those of you who were able to do it, congratulations. It's really just a beauty on the board. Such a spectacle of pieces. So really, for those of you who found it, really just congratulations. Not an easy one to find. And for those of you who just want to enjoy the show, it's rook captures on f1. That's what happens here. You don't have time for any slow moves, so just rook captures on f1. Knight d4 doesn't work here because you just pick up the rook, and then there's no actual threat. Knight e2 check, you just pick up with the bishop. So rook captures on f1 wins. We have king captures on f1, and now bishop to h3 with check. But after rook captures on f1, it was in this position that Abhimanyu Puranik actually resigned the game, as there is nothing more to be done here. But just to show you the variation, king captures, bishop to h3 with check. These two squares are taken, so the king has to go back to g1, also taken. King to g1, and now knight to d4, and now this is deadly. Because if the queen is under attack, if you capture the bishop, knight d2 check, king h1, and bishop to g2 delivers a mate. This is really impressive stuff. And after knight d4, if you don't capture the bishop, if you try something else, there's not much you can try. Knight f6 check. Okay, you can give one check. King h8. There aren't any more checks. Queen to d1. Now just offering some material, but it still doesn't help you. Just knight e2 check, and now you either go into the same mate, or you have to play this, because it's a silly move, but it is considered the best defense because white survives the longest. But still, whatever move you play now doesn't really matter. You're just gonna play something, and well, let's say f3, f4 doesn't really matter, and e1 queens the pawn with mate. So really incredible stuff. After this queen to b3 move, rook captures on f1, white resigned, and there you have it. This beautiful game. I don't know if you've seen it. It would be a shame not to see this game. It was not just the final position, not just the tactics, but also all the tactics and everything after that knight to c4 sacrifice. Just beautiful stuff. So yeah, that's the game. I do hope you enjoyed it. I would like to thank Barry McMurdoch, Matteo Schrellinger, Roberto Ang, Scott Meyer, and Edward Dudensing for a contribution to my channel. Thank you a lot. I really appreciate it. As usual, you can check 2 of my previous videos here. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you soon, continuing the coverage of the Paul Morphy saga, and of course checking up on your wonderful suggestions. And do check out Sjugirov versus Carlsen if you haven't, the first link in the description below. So thank you all, I will see you soon, and have an excellent rest of your day.